fence line where the wild winds run, where the skies stretch wide and kiss the sun. The sagebrush whispers, the rivers hum. This land's a story just begun. Wyoming calls where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. Boots hit gravel and the prairie sings with every hoofbeat. The frontier rings from ranchers' hands to miners' veins. The spirit of the West remains. Wyoming calls where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. So come ride with me through the dust and time. Find the soul of Wyoming beyond the fence line, beyond the fence line. Beyond the fence line, beyond the fence
Welcome to Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line, where we step past the headlines and into the truth. This show isn't about left or right, it's about what's real in Wyoming, across the country, and around the world. No spin, no talking points, just facts, context, and honest conversation. If you're tired of being managed instead of informed, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the fence line. And now, here is your host, Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 2026. Welcome to Wyoming.
Hey, good morning, Wyoming. Happy February 19th. Well, it's Thursday. I actually, for a second, didn't even know what day it was. Well, you know what? It actually snowed here in Cheyenne last night. So that's kind of awesome. We got a little teeny tiny bit of moisture. I know we're all praying for rain and hoping we get something because it is dry, dry, dry out there. So, what are we talking about today? Today and tomorrow, we are going to talk about, well, we're paying for what? I'm going to talk about the budget session as it's continuing on its path this week. And as you've seen, especially in the House, they are spending a lot of hours. They're working 12, 14, 20-hour days on amendments and ideas for the budget and talking about all sorts of different things. And of course, in the midst of that, there is this wonderful thing called Checkgate. I'm not going to bore you with that today. You've probably heard enough about it. You can look it up if you want to and figure out what's going on with Checkgate. And if you don't know about it, well, you might need to do a little Googling and it'll come up for you. With that, let's dive into what would I do with the state budget? And I think that's a great, fair question. We think about Wyoming isn't broke. Our budget is kind of something that acts like a little game of hide the ball, right? So let's be something different. Let's stop pretending that little line items don't matter because they do, and they multiply and they add up. So often I talk to my family about, guys, all these little $10 things we do, they add up to a lot in our family's budget. And government should operate. This is the interesting thing. Something that I like to say or like to think about is this. Government should operate like your family budget does. Ask yourself this question. Would you do this or do that with your own family budget? And a lot of times the answer to that is probably no, I would not do that. Or maybe yes, I would. But government does not operate like that. Government also doesn't operate like a business on Main Street. Like there are consequences to decisions, and you might have to close your business if you make a wrong decision. Government sort of operates in this own ether all by itself because guess what? Every dime that government has does not belong to government. It belongs to you and I. So it operates in its own ether, lack of accountability and responsibility and all of these things. And we see this fight going on at the Capitol over cutting really spending your tax dollars. And there's a lot of things that can be done to do this. But before I get into that, I want to just bring something up, just food for thought. Right now, about 190 pieces of legislation survived the 2/3 vote needed to make it through a budget session. I think we need to ask ourselves, at what cost does the new 190 pieces of legislation come to you and I, the taxpayer? And whether that's from a legislative standpoint or a practical, an appropriation standpoint, what if you add up the appropriations for all of that new bureaucracy or all of those new rules? What's that going to cost us? Are we still just headed down sort of this crazy train when it comes to budgeting? And please don't get me wrong. I don't think that all bills are bad or all legislation is inherently bad. We've got to ask ourselves, what is this direction we're going? What are we doing? So what is my plan? So glad you asked. Today and tomorrow, we're going to talk about budget items. I'm going to probably pick on some certain areas, but know that I'm not going to be more specific of, well, I think this should exist. This shouldn't exist. This needs to go away. This is more of like a broad principled discussion for the sake of this short show that we do every morning. My plan is pretty simple, though. Consolidate the clutter, sunset the busy work, put every agency across the board on a clear standard. Do the job, do it lean, prove it works. If it doesn't fit in those three criteria, we need to look at it. And the other thing is to ask, is it the role of government? I think that's a huge question that we don't ask often enough. Is this what we're doing? Is what we're paying for as government tax dollars the role of government? I don't think we ask that question enough when it comes to new legislation or even when it comes to budgeting. And the last thing is, and the governor even pitched his budget this year as the essentials. And I want to ask, is it really, truly essential? I think that's really important to ask. Is it truly essential? Does it need to have a permanent chair at the table of government? So let's talk a little bit today about the budget. I'm going to talk specifically about more a relatively large item. It's like kind of in between. It's not the biggest budget item, but it's definitely not the smallest budget item. And it is the boards and commissions that we have in this state. And by the way, there are a lot of things that we do right and that we do efficiently already, but I see a lot of room for improvement. The approximate total funding for our 46 or so boards and commissions, councils, and authorities in this state is around $500 million, roughly. So not chunk change, you guys. This is a relatively large budget item, and this is administrative, right? For the most part, boards and commissions are administrative. We talk so much about government being so administratively top heavy. So what are some things that we can do? So some of that, by the way, there's a small amount of funding that comes from the federal government. Most of it comes from the general fund, and then there's like 100 million and change or so that comes from fees and dedicated funds and other sources for funding as well. So about 27 or so of these boards and commissions do participate in Wyoming's administration and information organization, right? So this is a great way for our government to be more efficient by consolidating administrative back end work, HR, payroll, things like this, right? So this all gets consolidated, but we still have another 20 boards that don't participate in these things. So we've got all of these, we still have all of these sort of mini bureaucracies in the budget that spend about $500 million a year. What if we privatized everything that we possibly could in these areas? But in addition to this, we continued to consolidate government into one back office. You bring all of that through one organization so that you further consolidate and make things more efficient. So I bet we could cut that budget of almost $500 million by being more efficient at the way that we do these things. And don't get me wrong, we're headed in that direction, but I think there's a whole lot more work to do where we can consolidate the clutter that is administrative in government even further into Wyoming administration and information. I think we could do that. I think we could save a lot of money with the taxpayers. I also think that we can look at being able to cut just a lot of the extra stuff. So this is going to kind of blow your minds, you guys. Now, I haven't verified this yet, so I'm going to put this in context. But I was talking to a friend the other day who actually works over at the Capitol, and I was mentioning to him about this sort of golden hammer syndrome that government has, right? In the sense that, and the idea of that, you guys, are golden toilet or whatever you want to call it. The idea of that is like, why does the hammer that costs $10,000 or the $25,000 toilet, right? Where it's like, if you owned a business on Main Street, you would go down to Home Depot and pay $200 for a toilet. But government will pay $25,000 for that toilet. And there's just really unequal spending. And we know it goes on in government in a big way. And we really, really, really need to look at that stuff. So anyway, to my point, apparently we have all of these custom couches in the Capitol. And it's my understanding that, we wanted to be authentic to the time period and all this stuff. It's my understanding that those couches are $40,000 each. Now, that's very believable to me. I have not verified that, but it's very believable to me that we would do that in government. Raise your hand if you have a $40,000 couch in your living room. I bet none of us would raise our hand, let alone a $25,000 couch or a $15,000 couch. I think our couches, we got them on Facebook Marketplace, right? Like a lot of you probably did too. But this idea that government spending, because it's not their money, right? It's not their money. You and I would spend it differently in our home budgets. Heck, we're just trying to put food on the tables right now, right? So what would I do when it comes to government spending and budget? And I'm going to share some more budget items with you guys in a few minutes. But one government, one back office. I want to see the complete consolidation of state government. I want to get rid of any mini bureaucracy that we have. So anything that is like a mini bureaucracy operating within the state budget or in the state needs to be consolidated into one government and one back office. Everything. It all needs to go through one place. Talk about we could potentially cut tens of millions of operational and administrative costs by just doing this one thing, by consolidating. So asking ourselves, what's not consolidated into our one government, one back office in the state? Let's consolidate all of those operations. And again, some of those things already are done. In fact, I'll post it right here. So the Wyoming Administration and Information Office, I'll post this in the chat right now so you guys have it. Some of this is already being done, but let's go further. Let's actually bring anything in state government across the state. Let's consolidate it. We could save so much money and save taxpayer dollars and give that back to the people. Another thing that I would do is sunset and justification. I want to know what the clear purposes are for all of these things and what the measurable outcomes are. I don't want to just hear, I want to ask, why can't this be simpler? And of course I could kind of answer that question is we're constantly making things more and more complicated, right, you guys? But what can we do to make it simpler? I want things to be justified if we're going to spend on it, and not just because we think it needs to continue. And how much of this, you guys, could be privatized? The role of government to me is relatively simple when it comes to budget, when it comes to what we should be doing. Infrastructure, provide a safe, secure environment for people to succeed in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Period. If it falls outside of those two things, I want to see us move towards privatizing so much of what government does. Privatizing it will make it accountable, will arguably, well, no, not arguably, will factually drive costs down, because government, again, for some reason, will pay $25,000 for a toilet. And that drives the cost up, right? The administrative cost, everything up. So let's have justification for those things. Fee funded means fee discipline. If things are funded by fees, we should have a customer service mindset, not a bureaucratic mindset. In other words, what we should not be doing is, we've got all these fees coming in. Let's increase the bureaucratic state. And I'll use the example of Laramie County and all of the new stuff being passed for land rights and zoning and fees and things like this. So you get all those fees in, and what do? You hire more bureaucrats to collect more what? More fees, right? And there's this endless cycle. We see this going across the nation. And by the way, in Wyoming, you guys, we are in pretty good shape when it comes to this stuff. But you see the growth of the bureaucratic state because of fees. Oh, and by the way, on that note, while I'm thinking about it, there is a bill being going to committee today talking about those water runoff fees. I know a lot of you are concerned about that. Technically not constitutional, or we're trying to prove it's not constitutional for local municipalities to do this without voter input, right? It's just fees. And a lot of the way our local communities get around things like this is by the administration of fees. The purpose of a fee cannot be to increase administrative bureaucracy. Now, I'm going to say that again. The purpose of a fee in government or locally at the state level, wherever, even the federal level, cannot be with the mindset that we've got to increase administrative bureaucracy. But so often it is. You hear, well, Joseph, we need to hire, 4 more inspectors, or we need to hire 4 more, folks to go around our communities and look for violations. And so we've got to make these fees to increase administrative bureaucracy. We just can't do that. It's got to stop. We've got to change our mindset when it comes to fees. No more mystery earmarks, no more later funds. This is something else I would look at. So what do I mean by that? So I was the leader of a small town fire department for many years, 20 years, 18 of those years. I was the administrator. I was the company leader for a rural town fire department where we had about 300 or 400 calls a year, roughly, during our height. Less calls now because less people lived in the community, things like that. But I was always told at the end of the year, the end of the fiscal year, Joseph, spend all that money you've got left. Because if you don't spend it, we'll lose it. Think about that for a minute, you guys. You can't run a business like that, right? You can't run a household like that. Oh, I better spend all of my money because if I don't spend it, I'll lose it. So these mystery earmarks, these later funds, these carryover funds, right? Oh, well, we didn't spend that $500,000 last year, so we're going to carry it over and spend it this year instead. No, how about you give it back to the people? Let's find a way to decrease administrative burden to the people. So all of these mystery earmarks and things like this, we got to stop these practices that are really burdening the people of Wyoming. And by the way, if we do all of these things I'm talking about, you arguably would save hundreds of millions of dollars in state budget. Now we see this fight going on in the legislature to do some of these things now, to cut some of these things out, to put some of these things into the private sector. That's the right way to do it for the people, folks. And you could argue right versus left and rhinos and true conservatives and far right and far left. You could have all of those conversations. But if you take the politics out of it and you ask yourself, what is best for the taxpayer? That's what you've got to do. You've got to do some of these things. The last thing I would do is zero based budgeting. For those of you that don't know what zero based budgeting it is basically you take a department of government, you put their number at zero, and then you have them prove why they need those funds for everything else. So we know where every dime is going. You go, Joseph, that creates a tremendous administrative burden. I will be honest with you guys. That is not something that we would do all at once, right? You can't zero base budget everything all in the first year if I get elected governor and hope for success. So this is how I would approach zero based budgeting for Wyoming. We'll start with the smallest departments. Let's actually get good at zero based budgeting at the state level, and let's start with the smallest departments and let's pick a handful and let's work on that. Let's get that done and get really good at it. And then move up into the higher dollar items that we have across this state. And so doing zero based budgeting is the way we should do it across the board, not only at the state level, but at all local levels. And again, yes, I understand the administrative burden this creates, the additional administrative burden. And that is why we would roll out the policy and the principle over time. Trying to do it or bite it all off at once just would not be a really, really great or a possible thing to do. But now let's look at some specific numbers that may be of interest to you guys. And these are just things, again, I'm not more talking about specific policies in this show today and tomorrow, but just so you know, this is what's going on. Okay. So, and I'm going to just go through a whole bunch of like sort of random budget items. I'll explain some of them if I feel like I need to, but here we go. So these are budget items that are between $250,000 and $500,000. So dock recruitment and retention pot, $500,000. Governor's office for tribal liaisons, which is probably, an important thing, $500,000, $430,000. UW rodeo team support, $400,000. Government's Office for Baseline Scientific Assessment, $300,000. Wyoming Agriculture in the Classroom, $300,000. Metal ear tags for livestock producers, you're paying for those, $300,000. Wyoming Dot, taser equipment purchases, $267,000. Governor's transition money, $250,000. Increased daily rates for felony offenders placed in jails, $250,000. And guys, again, I'm not talking about specific line items here. Like, what does Joseph think about that? I'm just telling you guys, we pay for this. And a lot of these things, by the way, could be privatized, right? Perhaps government has oversight or something like that in some way. But if you privatized a lot of these things, you would reduce government spending tremendously, and quite arguably, you would do a couple more things. You would get better results because the results are accountable. And you would also just find that government works more efficiently by privatizing a lot of these things. So here's some more stuff. Subsistence loss insurance, $231,000. USGS grants, $218,000. Ballot propositions and publications cost, $125,000. We the People educational program, $120,000. UW external audit, $100,000. Commission on uniform laws, $93,000, $94,000. Y-dot GPS mapping maintenance contracts. I think it's probably an important thing. $36,000, probably needed. I guess I understand that. Gray Wolf depreciation of compensation set aside, $50,000. Processing costs for donated Wyoming meat to schools, $50,000. And the list kind of goes on and on and on, right? There's a lot of things in here. Moving expenses for appointees to move to Cheyenne, $20,000. And I believe that's per occurrence on that. And then if we take a look at some of this others, let's look at some of these boards and commissions too. And they, a lot of these are mini bureaucracies. The Board of Equalization gets 1 million. Well, what do I get? $1,795,000. Environmental Control Council, they get $610,000. Board of Architects and Landscape Architects, $243,000. The list goes on and on. The Gaming Commission gets about a little over $6 million. Real estate commissions, they get a grand total of, let's see here. Let's add this up real quick. The real estate commissions get a grand total of about $900,000. And it goes on and on and on, you guys. And don't get me wrong. I mean, some of these things are important, I guess, for that. Boy, we got to be careful with that safety and security thing, right, you guys? Because was it Benjamin Franklin that said if you give up a little safety and you give up a little liberty for safety and security, you don't deserve to have either one? And I'm kind of butchering that. We got to be careful about that. But if we consolidate all of these things into a central office, even more than we have now, we could save an awful lot of money. And I'm just looking at the budget right now. I'm going to pull up this number. There is, about $14 million in carryovers, in carryovers or footnotes or later sections where you have this money. If you need it, you can spend it later. You can do what you want. You can go to dinner, who knows, right? Who knows what goes on with this money? But when you start adding up all of these little things, and again, this isn't a show about what I think about, the Board of Medicine. Like, that's not what this show is about. By the way, they get, what do they get? They get $3,743,000. The Board of Medicine does. This isn't really about that specifically. We could have that discussion another day. But my point is when you start adding all of this stuff up, you're talking about hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars that could be optimized, that could be brought in and be more efficient. Leveraging technology to make things more efficient, and all of that. So there's a lot that could be done, and you kind of see the fight going on in the Capitol right now. This idea of, well, we have to keep all of these things. We can't get rid of anything. We can't cut anything. And you all know I'm in favor of both cutting the Wyoming Business Council and cutting the funds to UW as well. And I've explained that. You guys go back and look at my official statements on that and why I believe that way. Some of this stuff has got to be privatized. It's got to stand on its own feet. It's got to be accountable. There's a line item in this budget that lets us loan $75 million out. We can loan out $75 million and then we can just forgive it. Like, it's actually in the budget. So you can loan it out and you can forgive it. Now, what could possibly go wrong there? Oh, hey, Joseph's my buddy. He needs, $2 million to do whatever. Oh, but then we'll just forgive it, right? So we're gonna give him the money and then we're just gonna forgive it. This would you do that? Would you do that? Would you and I do that in the real world on Main Street or in our business, where we sort of just, oh, hey, I'll just give this to you, and if it's a loan, but then I can just forgive it. It's really easy to do with tax dollars, with other people's money, right, you guys? So that is kind of just the initial. I can't believe it's already been almost half an hour. That is kind of the initial look at what's going on in the budget. So tomorrow, what I'm going to do is we'll get into some more specific line items. Today was a little bit more about my approach and what I would do and how I believe that would work. And then some light specifics on what's going on in the budget. Tomorrow, I'll look at what's going on with all of the amendments, what's going on. And it's a lot to cover because obviously they're spending all week to do this stuff, and then we're going to cover it in 30 minutes. So tomorrow's show, part 2 of what are we paying for, in the state budget, I'm really going to dive into some more specifics and line items. And you know what? I might even talk about, well, Joseph, what do you think about the Board of Medicine? How could we do that better? I mean, personally, I think healthcare should be privatized, but that's a different discussion. Get government out of things that government shouldn't be doing. Give it back to the private sector. Let the private sector handle it. It would thrive better, it'd be more accountable. We would get better service as people. Because let's face it, when government says, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Woohoo! I'm from the government. I'm here to help. How often has that really worked out for you? I'm just you watching this show. A few of you are watching right now. How often does that work out really, really well? It ends up costing 10 times as much, and the results, a lot of the time, end up being less than desirable, right? Because bureaucracy just gets big, it gets top heavy, and you've got all of these chiefs, all of this administration, and then you got one guy digging the hole, right? And so flipping that pyramid upside down really, really helps the people of Wyoming and being accountable. And we're going to continue to watch the fight, I'm sure, in the legislature as for the next 3 or 4 weeks as they work through this budget session. So I just want to say that to you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to wrap this up, just a real quick sort of highlight view of what I would be doing. I would be consolidating the clutter. I'd be sunsetting the busy work. I want every agency to have a clear standard. And I want to ask the question, is it essential? I want to ask the question, is it the role of government? And when we ask those very simple questions, it helps us determine what needs to come and what needs to go. So if you're just joining this show, I talk mostly about $500 million that we spend on boards and commissions and councils and authorities across the state. And I focused on that, how we could further centralize what we are doing to save the taxpayers tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars by taking a hard look at this part of the state budget. So with that, you guys have a great Thursday. God bless you guys. Take care. And tomorrow we'll unpack this a little bit more and it'll be fun. So anyways, bye now.
That's today's episode of Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line with Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming Governor in 2026. If this mattered to you, share it. Stay engaged. And keep
I'm going to play Code of the West, you guys. I'm going to play out Code of the West.
Something different. Visit Joseph, the number 4, WY.com for more information.
Sun comes up on a small town road, coffee in a thermos, steel-toe boots. You don't flinch when the wind blows cold. You just do what you're born to do. Calloused hands on a busted gate, fix what's broke till it holds its weight. You don't cut corners, don't fake the shine. You see it through every single time. That's the code of the West. Stand tall, give your very best. Your word is the mark on your chest. You ride for your people, you don't forget. Some things you just can't buy. A clean heart and a clear sky, know where to draw that line. That's the code of the West. That's the way I ride. You shake a hand that's a 90. Doesn't change with the way you feel. If you say you'll show you'll be on time. Rain on the roof or a blue sky shine. You wear the name on your paycheck proud. Hold up the crew when the chips fall down. You don't brag big, you just get it done. Few words spoken, but you speak in tongues. That's the code of the West. Stands high